Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be talking about Major League Baseball rule changes, a little Bears, a little Bulls, a little Blackhawks. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So make sure you head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, how are you doing?
I am doing great. I have been enjoying this really nice weather we've had the past few days after all that snow we got and the sleeting rain. It's been so odd. You know, you have warmer weather like a week ago, then you get the snow and you get the freezing rain. And now today, yesterday, it was gorgeous outside. It was like mid-50s today and sunny. A friend and I went on the Naperville River walk. Just a really good day. And I think that sunny, warmer weather this time of year not only feels good, but it's a good sign that there's baseball on the horizon, and that's exciting. And we're going to get spring training games soon. So, you know, hopefully we are truly entering spring weather. We'll probably get one or two more snow, but let's just say I think it's a good sign.
Hopefully not, because the other day with that freezing rain, it froze the locks in my garage door.
Oh, yeah, that weather was the worst. And I tried driving a few blocks that day. I'm like, this sucks. Like, it was like driving on a 7-Eleven Slurpee. Like someone took the world's biggest 7-Eleven Slurpee and just gushed it all over the streets. It was like trying to drive on one.
Yeah, I got a new computer at work and there's something wrong with it. And they were like, oh, can you just drive into the office? And I'm like, in this? No. I'm like, you can remote in to my computer and deal with it that way. I'm not driving in this for you to play around on my computer.
Yeah, it was gross.
But you know, why don't we start baseball?
Okay, that's a little change of pace. I like it.
Little change of pace. It's, you know, I guess the thing I want to talk about first is that's going to affect both the Cubs and the Sox is the rule changes that are in place.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's been bandied around a lot this week on sports radio and stuff, but I kind of wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, sure.
You know, there's some significant rule changes, and I would say probably one of the most noticeable will be the pitch clock.
Mm-hmm.
And so essentially they've been testing this in the minors, and they want to, you know, tone down the amount of time between pitches. And
you couldn't have done that when Steve Traxel was pitching.
And if you don't, and apparently there's going to be no ramp up period, is starting spring training game 1. They're going to be, if you don't make the pitch within the time, it's an automatic ball. And if you're a batter and you're not in the box with, I think, 8 seconds left before the end of the clock, it's an automatic strike. And the point is they're trying to speed up the game because, you know, it's weirdly non-noticeable transition. But from when I was a kid to now, the game is significantly slower. Significant.
Yeah.
And you even go back to watch old games and you're like, oh wow, this is night and day different baseball.
And
And
Mark Burley's not pitching anymore.
and uh what you have is the younger fans are not as into the game, and you have viewership down because on a weeknight, you're not going to sit and watch a 3-hour baseball game. It's a lot to invest. It's like your whole night. Versus you watch a hockey game and you're clocking in at like 2:20 and it's a significant difference in time. And plus the action isn't there because there's a lot of home run strikeout, working the count to try to get walks. It's not as much ball in play, and they're hoping that this leads to more, I guess, action in the game and more and a faster time of the game. A lot of people are up in arms about this. Your thoughts?
So I have spent many years being anti-pitch clock because, my thought was simply the great thing about baseball is that there is no clock. Every other sport has a clock. Football has a clock. Hockey has a clock. Basketball has a clock. Soccer has a clock. I don't know shit about rugby or cricket, but, those are bigger in Europe than they are over here, in North America. But, the big four sports in North America, baseball was the one sport, team sport, I should say, not counting like golf or bowling, that doesn't have a clock. So, I didn't like that idea for a while, but I will say this is I think, like many other rule changes that I wasn't fans of before, once these are in place and you get used to them, you kind of don't notice it as much. Like, I think if once this pitch clock gets, implemented, the game's just going to flow. And you might be thinking about it more if you're watching on TV because the clock is going to be there in your face. Like, you will see the pitch clock. But if you're like at a game watching it and you're just kind of focusing on the diamond, your mind is probably going to trail off in terms of thinking about the pitch clock. It's just going to be how things flow. And according to MLB, when they implemented this rule into the minor leagues, it shaved off 25 minutes in each game. That's almost a half hour. So that is noticeable. So I'm willing to accept this. And I look at some of the other rules with it. Hitter gets 1 timeout per plate appearance. I think that's fair. Pitchers get 2 disengagements, pickoff attempts. I'm not as big a fan of the pickoff attempt rule. I think you should have every right to try to throw a pickoff as much as you can, even when fans boo when you try 4 or 5 times. I'm not a big fan of controlling that. I
I'm
I
fine.
don't really like that.
Yeah, I don't care about that so much, I guess. I guess I kind of do. They're gonna call more balks. They're gonna be tighter on the balks.
Yeah.
And
so that's significant. Some of those deliveries are borderline balkish.
oh, absolutely. You're gonna have a lot of guys that are having to switch up things they do because they're gonna get called. And I'm okay. I guess I don't want to control the number or keeping a guy on first. But the balks I'm fine with because, I guess I want to increase the excitement of the game. And if you have more control over, pitchers trying to keep guys on base, it's going to lead to more stolen bases. The bigger bases are going to lead to more stolen bases.
I like the idea of those bases opening up, revealing a pizza inside. If you steal 3 straight bases, the third base is going to open up and there's going to be a big slice of pizza in there for you.
I mean, they say that the bigger bases are for safety reasons. It's totally so you could steal more bases.
If they did alterations to the bases, if it were for safety reasons, then that change would probably look more like the softball first base. What do they
Yes.
call that?
That is like that extra base.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's if that were worried about safety, I was literally going to say the same thing. It's exactly what they would do is the softball first base and leave everything the same. And that extra, the 3 inches bigger base is not going to have more safety at first base. It's going to make it easier to steal bases. They can't shrink the field, but they can have more balks, so it makes it harder for pitchers to pick a guy off, and you have a shorter base path, so it's almost 5 inches shorter, and that doesn't seem like a ton, but think about how close balls are at second base for stolen bases.
Oh yeah, sure.
And it's weird to think about, like when I was a kid, like you had guys that stole a ton of bases, and now it's not that common to have a lot of stolen bases.
Right. I mean, it was a bigger part of the game back then. You had a lot more hit and run and bunts and guys trying to get on with who had speed. Like your old time leadoff guy was like the 300 plus hitting, stealing base guy. And that was kind of the style of the game. And I think that they kind of want to bring that back a little bit because, you're very reliant on base home runs. And there's a lot of strikeout with that. And I think Theo Epstein even alluded to this the other day on 670 The Score. When you're striking out a lot in a game, let's say you're seeing guys strike out a lot, you're seeing guys with long at bats and walking, that's going to make the game longer because you're taking a lot of pitches. So I think that maybe trying to change the dynamic a little bit is also going to be part of how they're going to make the game more interesting. Seeing more guys run on the bases, that makes it more interesting. Maybe allowing more room to play a bit of that more small ball, old school, kind of will allow the game to flow a little bit better. So it's not like, okay, is it a walk, home run, or strikeout? So all these things are kind of going into this attempt to make the game flow quicker and move quicker.
Yeah, but back to my point is, so last year's stolen base leader was Jorge Mateo from Baltimore. He stole 35 bases. When I was a kid, let's see.
Ricky Henderson was probably the big guy, right?
Ricky Henderson was the dude. And Ricky Henderson stole 100 bases more than once. One year he had 130 stolen bases. So he basically, like, if you would have added 100 stolen bases to the leader this year, they would be on par. It's insane. And here's stolen base leaders: 100, 56, 130, 108, 66, 80, 87, 60, 93, 77. And then it just, now it's a whole lot lower: 34, 45, 40, 35. And all of these rule changes are essentially, like, people are like, oh man, all of these big rules are put in at once. They did that for a reason. One is to rip the Band-Aid off, and two is all of these things are going to shrink the game time and score more runs, allow more stolen bases. With the pitch clock in place, the thinking is guys aren't going to be able to ramp up and fire it in there. They're going to have to be more controlled in their throwing motions, which is going to lead to more hits. Changing the shift, you're going to have guys get more hits. Those lefties are going to get more hits. And it's going to hopefully lead to more runs, more fast-paced game, and a shorter game. And that's good for the game.
And it is worth noting with these shift restrictions, the rules are you have to have two infielders positioned on either side of second base. So basically how MLB describes it is take the ball diamond and just draw a line right down the middle, cut it right in half. Two guys on one half, two guys on the other. So, if you wanted to shift over your third baseman and your shortstop over closer towards the middle of the diamond, you can do that. They just can't cross the line. And then when you could do the same thing on the other side with your second baseman and your first baseman, if you want your second baseman either playing as close to up the middle as you can or more towards first base, as long as they're within those boundaries, you can kind of move it around. You can kind of make an exaggerated shift. You can't have one defender right in the middle of the field on that line, or have like your third baseman playing in between your first baseman and second baseman, and they can't go past the dirt. So they can't be, you can't put your third baseman in shallow right field. It's the extreme shifts that they've gotten rid of. It's going to make a difference, sure. But, one thing to just keep in mind is the basic rule is two guys on either side. So
what they're really going to do is those hitters that still are extreme pull hitters, that really have a difficult time hitting to the opposite field consistently, is they're going to do a makeshift shift and play two outfielders and have that third outfielder play as a de facto infielder.
Yeah. I mean, you can still get creative with this.
Oh yeah, you really can't do much with your infielders. You're going to have to use an outfielder as an extra infielder, and you're able to do that if you have a bunch of good fielding, fast outfielders, because then essentially you have two center fielders patrolling the whole outfield, and then your third guy playing an infield. And I know a team that really is set up well to possibly do that. And they're called the Cubs. Because
that's good thing they built their team the way they did up the middle.
Well, you have a good up the middle defense, and you have good fielding outfielders.
Yes.
I mean, we haven't totally gotten to see Suzuki play outfield, but he's essentially the equivalent of a Gold Glover when he played in Japan. And so Ian Happ was a pretty good center fielder, and he's probably going to be playing in the corner spot. So that's going to make him a better defender, but he's extremely fast. And Cody Bellinger is a really good outfielder too. And so you have three good outfielders, and at least two of them are very fast and good outfielders. You're able to do that still and have those shifts if need be.
Right. I do think it would be funny if you just had a big white line dividing each diamond, and you reviewed it. If you think that he might have crossed over the line, like if the shortstop came over, might have crossed the line, and you have an NFL type review where you got like the camera in the base and you're looking at where he crossed the line. And if you look at the footprint, they bring out the chains to measure and see like if it was close enough to the line or not. But I mean, it's just going to have to be the umpire paying attention and looking at the eye test. Now, obviously, like if there's a play up the middle, there's a ball hit up the middle and they cross and field it, then obviously you're free to do it. Like there's a ball smashed up the middle and Dansby Swanson runs over and dives and makes the play and he technically crosses the line. You can do that. It's just where they're positioned.
Right. So those are your rule changes. And honestly, I'm okay with them. I can deal. The pitch clock, I just like I think it's gonna be cumbersome and weird for the first month or two of the season.
Mm-hmm.
But by the end of the season and going forward, I think it's just going to be so ingrained that no one's really going to pay attention to it.
Yeah, and you know what? We might actually end up liking it by the end. Like, hey, you know what? These games are going by quicker. When I go to 120 games at Wrigley and I'm hitting the road a half hour, 40 minutes quicker than I normally do, probably a good thing, right? I think that there's going to be some adjusting that's going to have to be done. And like you said, they're not easing into this. The rules are the rules now. And sure, you have spring training, but a month or so of spring training games, there's still going to be that adjustment period when you play regular season baseball. So it's going to be interesting to see how well these guys adjust. And I think that one thing that the Cubs did that I really like for this especially is it's nice that you have catchers that you can trust communicating. Like Yan Gomes got all the praise in the world last year with how he worked with young pitchers. And it's comforting knowing that you have a guy like him to help these pitchers adjust to this kind of thing, because this stuff does matter. And I think that having a good defensive catching core, a veteran catching core, I think that's important for these young pitchers, especially with these rule changes.
Right. But you know what would piss me off, and it is not the pitch clock, but if the broadcast teams display the pitch clock on the screen.
I was just going to wonder, is there like a shot clock or a play clock in the NFL? Would they do that on the score bug? So you have score, outs, men on base, pitch miles an hour. Would you put that clock on the score bug? I was wondering that same thing.
Oh, I don't want that at all. I
mean,
want
if
it
you
to
could
be
see it in camera's view, then you don't need it.
If it's like you can sort of see it as part of the camera shot, I don't care. I just don't want them to display it as a graphic on the screen.
Here's the thing, Sean. I'm not saying they're 100% going to, but I could see them doing it. I really could see them doing that. I mean, in the NFL, you need it. In the NBA, you do need it. Even if it is in the shot, it's sometimes hard to see from the angle. If it's in clear view of the television, yeah. But here's the other thing too, is what do we know about baseball broadcasts at times? Most of the time in the modern age, yeah, you see it from behind the pitcher facing the batter. But we do see those camera angles every now where they switch from behind the plate. And if there's no view of the pitch clock, well, are you just going to not show that angle, or are you going to have that pitch clock graphic on there? I could see them putting it on there.
I want the pitch clock to just become a old habit. Just, oh, hey, we got to do it. And everybody just think it's just there to encourage players to be within this time window. And then once it becomes muscle memory, that it's never, nobody violates it. Never worry about it. If it's spring training and they put it on there to kind of get the fans used to it, then fine. But the regular season, I just don't want to see it, because I don't care. Like, I want to see what the pitch is. I want to see what the batter does. And like, I don't want to see the pitch clock as a graphic, because then I'm going to be focused on them. Like, oh, is he going to get the pitch off in time? I think it's not the NFL play clock. I don't need to see that.
I'm going to do a poll on Twitter and see what the fans think.
Yeah, I'm curious.
I've been thinking about this. I have been thinking about this. I don't know if you saw my Photoshop. Did you see my Photoshop?
I didn't.
I proposed the Wrigley pitch clock. What it should look like. You just make it like exactly like the clock on top of the scoreboard. Just put another one behind the home plate.
That would be awesome.
So I'm going to ask this on Twitter and let's see what people say. So do you think that the MLB will display the pitch clock on the score bug on the TV broadcast? Because it's so funny. I didn't really think about that until you and I started talking about it, and then you brought it up. I'm like, okay, that's a good. I'm glad I'm not the only one thinking that.
Yeah. So Marquis, if you're listening, go to Shy Fan Pat 2 on Twitter and see what the poll says. It's official poll. Official.
The official. So I'm going to ask yes, no, or I don't know. This for the record, this isn't opinion based. This is, do they think I'm not asking, do you think they should? It's, do you think they will? Just making that clear.
Oh, I think they will. I think they're going to.
So do you think I should switch this to should they?
I think you should do is should they?
Okay.
Because I'm curious of what other people think about that.
Okay. All right. That's fair. All right, let's do that then. Okay, so here's the official question. Baseball fans, Swerski Sports and I are talking on our podcast. Do you think that the MLB should display the pitch clock on the score bug on the TV broadcast? So I put in should. And here we go. Let's see if any votes start coming in. But yeah, this is going to be interesting because with the pitch clock, there are a lot of guys who are instinctively in a routine, guys who have been pitching the way they've been pitching since they were young kids. And let's face it, some of the coaching that they've had has been centered around how they have their in-between pitch routine. And some players probably were coached to have longer routines in between. Now, I'm not a pitching coach, so I can't tell you exactly how that would work, but you know, it's a big adjustment for a lot of people. Now, you look at guys who pitch with the long windups versus guys who pitch from the stretch. So you see a lot of relievers pitch through the stretch, and you see a lot of starters, you know, pitch with a windup. And, you know, you wonder, is it going to be an easier adjustment for starters or relievers? Well, you know, you see a lot of starters pitch with those windups. So maybe for some of those it is, but you know, at the same time too, things have kind of changed a little bit over the years. And, you know, you don't see a lot of those wacky windups anymore, you know, like, wouldn't you agree? You saw a lot of wackier windups back in the day.
Oh yeah. I'm thinking in like the 70s and early 80s, you saw some crazy windups. And yeah, you don't see those as much anymore.
So here's another thing to think about too. Let's say you and your catcher are having trouble getting on the same page. And I know there's going to be a lot of that pitch comm used. And if you can't get on the same page and you're not getting it off, how many times are we going to see guys saying, pitch comm not working, pitch comm not working. What do you want me to do about it? If they run out of time.
I think the pitcher's just going to throw what he's going to throw.
You just lob it.
He goes in there. He's like, the catcher wants me to throw a curveball and I want to throw a fastball. We're going to fight about it. Fine. I'm throwing a knuckler and then it's going to go on him when he gets the pass ball.
Well, and it's like, you know, think of it like as a rushed quick pitch. Like, oh shit, I got to pitch this. You know, 3, 2, 1. That's going to be interesting. I think for some guys who are just have natural, you know, naturally quicker routines and they like to work quicker, you know, those guys will adjust okay. I just wonder how it's going to be like for certain guys who have certain routines, you know, the windups that might take a little longer. Will some pitchers opt more for the stretch now?
That's a good question.
I don't know. These are all things that we're curious to see how they play out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could look to the minors for a little bit of clues.
Sure.
But you know, a lot of times the minors are younger guys. Younger guys are a little more easy to adapt. So it'll be curious. It'll be curious to see.
Yeah, and you know, they change roles down there too. You know, sometimes they're starters and they end up turning relievers in the majors, so their roles change a little bit. So yeah, that it is a game of constant adjustments after all.
But yeah, switching gears a little bit. The projections are in for the Cubs. Pacoda has them. It is a 77 win team. Zips and Fangraphs have the Cubs at 78 wins. Do you think that's a fair evaluation? And do you think they'll exceed the expectation?
So I'm not surprised the projections don't like the Cubs. I knew that when we'd see Pacoda come out, it was probably going to be around the number I guessed. Like, I don't think it's a shock that Pacoda doesn't like the Cubs. But the thing is with the Cubs is that there's a lot of variables that are just kind of mysteries right now, because I think Justin Steele is very undervalued by a lot of projections. He was so damn good in the second half last year, and I don't think he gets enough credit for it. And I think that you look at some other guys too, where you say, okay, Dansby Swanson, his last few years, he's been playing his best ball. Is he going to continue that? And I think chances are that he does. I think people wonder, is Ian Happ going to follow up with another solid year? I think people wonder what some of the young pitching is going to look like Hayden Wesneski. So there's a lot of variables here. And let me just say this about this team in this year. If they finish with 77 wins, would I be shocked? No. But do I think they can absolutely go over that mark? Yeah, I do. I think if things go right, they can win 80 plus games. But I'm also not going to say that them winning high 70s number of games like they're projected is necessarily out of the question. I think it's a fundamentally good team. It just doesn't have that star power. That, in my opinion, is really what's missing. I trust them to play good defense. I trust them to play fundamentally sound baseball. I like their pitching more than I think the projections do, and projections tend to be a bit down on inexperience or really old guys. So the Cubs have a lot of inexperience. So it's kind of not surprising that the projections aren't as high. But they don't have you don't have a Shohei Ohtani, you don't have a Paul Goldschmidt, you don't have a Francisco Lindor or an Aaron Judge or a Carlos Correa or anything like that, but you have solid players. So I think a range from where the projections are to mid-80s wins is all on the table. That's my long-winded answer.
Yeah, I'm fine with the projection, mostly because it doesn't impact me at all. It has no bearing on the game.
They're wrong half the time. I mean,
and
projections are projections.
Yeah. And what's cool is the Cubs actually have their own like system. They do their own projections. They don't make it public, but I'm curious to how they projected themselves last year and this year.
The Ricketts rules.
Did we get George McCaskey to come down and throw a crayon at a dartboard and see what sticks?
The board that has the projections, the ranking is given by the number of Gallagher Way pumpkins. Pitching, we give it 5 out of 5 Gallagher Way pumpkins.
But the other thing is that the Cubs won 74 games last year. And they're projecting that the health of the staff and the additions they made are only good for 3 games. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, but I'll live with it. It's not going to bother me at all. And I think the Cubs exceed that. I think the Cubs will be over 500.
And I think that a lot of it has to do with what's around them. There's going to be that factor in it too, because the National League's got some pretty damn good teams. You look at the Dodgers, you look at the Padres, you look at the Mets, you look at the Phillies, you look at the Braves, and you look at the Cardinals. Now, knock on wood, I'm ready to eat crow and be totally wrong on this, but I also think they're a little generous with the Brewers. I don't think the Brewers are a bad team, but that offense is so mediocre, and their best pitcher is really pissed off. Did you hear about that? The arbitration case?
No.
Wow, Corbin Burns lost his arbitration and said that the relationship between him and the Brewers is kind of hurt right now.
Oof.
Yeah. So I don't think Pacoda is factoring that in their projections. And again, I think the Brewers will be a competitive team. They'll be in the mix, but I feel like they're getting a little too much love. And listen, if Christian Yelich does bounce back, then yeah, they're capable of playing where they're projected, but last few years has been kind of for him. And their starting pitching staff is great. You know, Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, those are really some good pitchers they have over there. But okay, so you lost Hunter Renfroe, you lost Colton Wong. I mean, your main producers are going to be Rowdy Tellez. You know, maybe Christian Yelich bounces back. They don't have Omar Narvaez anymore. They don't have, Colton Wong. I don't know. How many years have the Brewers just been able to carry a mediocre lineup into success? Like, I just feel like you need a little more in that lineup, even with your good pitching. But we'll see. We'll see. It's really the Cardinals that are going to be the heavy favorites in the division, and I don't think there's any reason to doubt that.
Looking back, last year's Pacoda projections had the Cubs at 70 wins, and they wound up with 74. So if they go 4 over, that's 77, puts them at 81. That's about where I project them.
Would you agree that the path for the Cubs to a potential postseason is probably 90% would be likely a wild card? I don't see the Cubs being better than the Cardinals. I as much as I hate to say it.
I don't think they will be. The only way that I see the Cubs winning this division, I think the Brewer, I mean, we can all pretty much safely say that the Pirates and the Reds are going to be bad.
Yes, I think they'll be peskier. I don't think they'll roll over like they have the past few years, but they're not going to be contenders.
Well, I'll have you know, the Pirates increased their spending by 23%. So now they're only the 3rd lowest spending team in baseball.
Because they brought back,
I think it was arbitration, and it was arbitration stuff.
Okay.
But they're not going to be good teams. I think the Brewers, while they have a path to, I could see them being good. I think there's also a path for them to be a hot mess too.
Yeah, and you know what? With the Corbin Burns stuff, if he's really pissed off and the Brewers are not in first place or right in the thick of a race, I feel like the chances of him getting traded are pretty high. we see the Brewers trade guys away all the time. Look at last year. They
Mhm.
were in a race and they traded away Josh Hader.
Yep. So I see a path for them to just really go south. And the only way I could see the Cubs winning that division over the Cardinals would be if the Cardinals just absolutely got decimated by injury.
Right. And I feel like their pitching staff, their starting staff is a little shaky, especially on the injury front. Jack Flaherty, especially, he's one of the more talented pitchers in baseball, but he's had some big injury issues over the past few years. And, with like Paul Goldschmidt and Arenado have been very durable, but especially Paul Goldschmidt, he's 35, 36 now. I'm not saying he's going to get hurt, but you never know. It would take something like that. And I'm not wishing anyone.
No. I'm just saying that would be the way,
Right.
You have a Contreras, again, nagging hamstrings, Arenado or Goldschmidt going down for a,
because I don't see them underperforming. You get what you get from Arenado and Goldschmidt. You're going to get all-star caliber production every time.
Right. So that would be the only way. The Cubs don't have enough talent, I think, to beat them, head to head. If all health is equal.
Right. Also, the other thing too, I think that's a factor, is the Cubs and every other team are playing every team in baseball. So you have less division games, but with less games, those games are even more important now, in my opinion.
Right.
So you got, if you want any chance, you got to beat all your division rivals. Everybody. When you got to beat the Pirates, you got to beat the Reds, and you got to win games in Milwaukee and St. Louis. It's not been particularly pretty as a whole watching them play Milwaukee and St. Louis over the past few years. Though last year they played a little better in Milwaukee, but still, like, as a whole, we've had some really bad losses in both those ballparks over the past few years. And if you want a chance, you got to win in those buildings.
I'm looking at the White Sox Pagoda projections, and they are projected to be 78 and 84.
I think they're going to be better than that. If they're healthy, they're going to be better than that. There's a lot of mixed feelings about the White Sox right now, but I still think they have the talent to contend for a division title or at least a postseason spot. But if you have all those injuries again, then yeah, it is going to be a problem, because I don't think Cleveland is going to be going away. I don't think they're as good as they were last year. I think they're a good team, well coached, good fundamentals. I do think they overplayed a little bit last year, but they're not going to just lie over and die. Like, I don't think they're a fluke, even though I do think they overplayed a little bit. So they're going to be in the mix. The Twins are weird. You never know. One year the Twins win 95 games. The next year they lose 95 games. But I don't think the Twins are going to be necessarily a pushover either. They got Carlos Correa back. They made a trade for Pablo Lopez to help their pitching staff. So is Byron Buxton going to be healthy? That's going to be the biggest thing for the Twins. If he is, they're going to be, they're going to be a notable opponent for the White Sox. The Tigers and the Royals are going to be dog shit. So you just got to beat those guys.
I was reading the other day about a interesting thing about Jameson Taillon. The Cubs pitch lab. I've been working with him about changing up, throwing the curveball more, and also trying to work with him to add a sweeping slider.
Mm-hmm.
If he could add like a wipeout slider, we could have a really good pitcher on our hands.
I really like Jameson Taillon, and if you actually look at his numbers, like right before he got sick, he was really good. really solid. I mean, not like Cy Young good or all-star, but he was really solid. And, even last year pitching at Yankee Stadium, the numbers were pretty respectable. So I think there's potential for him to be a really solid piece in this rotation.
And then the other story is you have Wilson Contreras kind of talking about things how they went down with the Cubs, and he just seems really bitter.
Yeah. And I don't mind him saying he's happy to be a Cardinal. He's happy to be here, happy to be excited. You're on a new team. Of course you're going to say that, right? But this is more than just saying he's happy to be in his new spot. And I get it to an extent. I do get it to an extent. You had the emotional breakup, if you call it, last year where you thought you were getting traded and then you weren't. And it was kind of like you had to say goodbye multiple times. I'd get the frustration behind that, but I think that there was a lot that spoke to us about why the Cubs are ready to move on. Talking about working with the young pitchers, something that he kind of struggled to do and had to adjust the way that he might not have wanted to adjust to, but the team wanted him to. And then you factor in how well Yan Gomes did that. I think you could put 2 and 2 together as to why the Cubs decided to move on. And frankly, moving on from Contreras is magnified by 10 because he just went to their biggest rival. So I get it to an extent, but like, doesn't it get exhausting after a while? Like consistently, like trying to make it known that that your team let you go. I don't know. Here's my honest feeling. Shit's going to happen between these two teams, and he's going to be in the middle of it. There's going to be a hit by pitch. There's going to be some sort of barking. There's going to be a bat flip. Someone's going to get pissed, and it's going to blow up. I really do believe that.
I mean, that's fair to say.
And at this point, I'm just trying to be like, whatever. But you can't help but notice it. I mean, I'm not trying to shit on him too much. The guy did so much for the Cubs.
Right. But I'm not shitting on him. I just also I'm not going to cheer for a Cardinal.
No, I'm not either. Hell no, I'm not either. I am not at all. Not even thinking about it. Like, I can't pretend like I know exactly how everything went down, and I can't say that I can fully comprehend how he feels. But Dexter Fowler didn't do that. Anthony Rizzo didn't really do it. He talked a little bit about it, but all I'm trying to say is that Wilson Contreras has really, really, really made it known that he knows that his former team let him go. And again, I could sympathize to an extent. I just feel like it's going a little far. And Contreras is a guy, and again, I'm not trying to be overly critical, but he's not afraid to get under an opponent's skin. Like, you can agree with that, right?
That's right. That's fact.
And I don't think he's going to be afraid to get under the Cubs' skin by any means.
The weird part, though, is he's going to take it out on teammates or former teammates that had literally nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's getting a little excessive. And after a while, it's like, hell, if I'm the Cardinals, I'm like, okay, we get it. Focus on helping us win here.
Focus on being a better catcher.
Yeah.
The Athletic has their preliminary cut down roster for the Cubs. I'm gonna throw it out there, and you tell me where you disagree.
Okay.
Catchers: Jan Gomes, Tucker Barnhart.
Yep.
Infielders, Dansby Swanson, Nico Horner, Eric Hosmer, Patrick Wisdom. They have their utility guys later. Outfielders, Hap, Bellinger, Suzuki.
Mm-hmm.
Mancini, McKinstry, Morel.
Yeah, Mancini's going to be your DH.
Stroman, Tyone, Steele, Drew Smiley, and they said on the bubble, Sampson and Wesneski.
Yeah, it's we heard yesterday that it's going to be between Wesneski, Sampson, and Assad for the 5th spot because Kyle Hendricks is not ready.
Right. Bullpen, Fulmer, Boxberger, Hughes, Thompson, Alzolay, and Wick.
I mean, for the opening day roster, yeah, that all sounds right because I think if I was a betting man, I would say that Mervis is going to start in AAA unless he absolutely kills it this spring. What do you do with Nick Madrigal? He's getting reps at third, but
I mean, the thing is he going to be as good a fielding third baseman as Patrick Wisdom?
We know Wisdom at least has the arm.
Wisdom last year had a rough fielding year, but previous years he was a okay fielder.
Yeah, he was actually pretty good in 21.
So he's capable. So is Madrigal going to be a better fielding third baseman than Wisdom? I'm going to say that's a pretty unlikely scenario.
Yeah, I mean, it's a natural position for Wisdom where Madrigal's never played there before.
And then would he be a better hitter than Wisdom?
Well, I mean, they're the opposites.
Right.
One is a slappy make contact guy. The other is strike out but hit the ball 10,000 feet.
And honestly, I think you need those home runs in the lineup. I think they're more important to you than a higher batting average. And Madrigal is not an on-base guy. He's a batting average guy.
Right. He doesn't walk. He doesn't slug. He just puts the ball in play and hopes that it finds grass.
And, the only saving grace is if he can play third and get some reps in it short and show that he can field there at least okay, is maybe that leads him to be a super utility guy.
Sure.
And / pinch hitter. It would be nice to have a guy that puts the ball in play as a pinch hitter. You pull him in with runners on in scoring position with 2 outs, put the ball in play rather than risk that strikeout. That's a possibility, but he does have options. They could put him down in the minors as well.
Sure. It's not out of the question. Maybe you try to build his value and you include him in a trade.
That's a possibility as well. I mean, maybe they're auditioning him at third base to trade.
Well, and keep this in mind too. They just signed Edwin Rios.
Yeah. Wasn't it a minor league deal?
Major league.
Was it a major league?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe so. Let me double check that, but I thought it was.
Yeah, I think there's not going to be a lot of surprises, I think, on the Cubs roster, but
yeah, major league contract. Yep.
Oh, okay. I don't think there's going to be a lot of surprises, but I think you're going to see some exciting things in spring training.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too.
It'll be interesting to see Chase Strumpf at the major league camp.
Strumpf?
At the major league camp. I want to see some of these young guys. I want to see PCA play in spring training.
Yeah, that'll be one to really watch.
I mean, he's probably going to get sent down early because they know he's not going to start on the majors.
Oh, sure, but at least you'll get a little bit of a look.
But I just want to see him, with the core guys, because he's going to be there next year.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So I don't see any shockers there. White Sox, they made a move we've been calling for a long time. They signed Elvis Andrus to a 1-year deal.
Yeah, he'll be their second baseman. He's never played there before, but I would imagine a veteran like Andrews, who's played around so long, I wouldn't worry too much about him adjusting defensively. And if he plays like he plays at shortstop, then, you'll have a reliable defender on that side. And I think really what people are most happy about is they at least have stability at that position, because it was so up in the air with Romy Gonzalez and Edmundo Sosa. You were worried about the consistency with unknowns. At least there's some stability there. Do I think they could have done better in the offseason replacing that? Yes, but it is something. So at least there's that.
He's also an insurance policy if your shortstop gets hurt again.
Yeah. Yes. That is true.
He can play second. If Tim Anderson gets hurt, you could slide him over to short, and then it's an insurance policy for you. And
which you obviously don't want to happen, but it's good to have.
Yeah. And if Sosa ends up having a good, rookie season, it's you can always just make Andrus the utility guy, put him on the bench. It's
sure. Veteran presence.
It's a 1-year, $3 million deal. I think it was a smart move.
You needed to do something.
Yeah. And it's one of those ones that is not going to block anybody from coming up, but it's an insurance policy in multiple fronts. It's something we've been talking about for years with the White Sox, is they never give themselves a safety net. And I think this is the first time in a while they've really given themselves a safety net.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Do I think Andrus is a superstar player? No, but he's a veteran that is a hell of a fielder. That's a good clubhouse guy. Like it just makes sense for your team.
Yeah, like I said, you needed to do something. I mean, second base has been such a black hole for the White Sox since what? Who was the last stable second baseman the White Sox have had?
Nick Madrigal.
I mean, can you even count that? He's barely played for them.
I don't know.
I'm just trying to think back. Because, Juan Uribe was at third in 2005, right? That was third base.
Yes.
And then, who was that second baseman they had? This is going to bug me. I'm totally blanking on his name.
Ray Durham?
No, I thought that was before. Iguchi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Iguchi. That's right. And he was there for a few years, 3-4 years, something like that. And then, since then, let's see if we can look back at the White Sox second baseman
But
history.
Gucci
here.
was there 05 through 07.
Yeah. Well, Gordon Beckham was going to be like the next guy, and that just didn't really work out. Because Gordon Beckham came up, 2009? And his rookie year did pretty well. And then it just kind of went downhill from there. He never really reached that potential that we thought he was going to have. So you had him there for some time. He just didn't play as well as you thought he would. And then eventually the Gordon Beckham era kind of just died out. So stable in terms of who played there consistently, just not the production. That makes sense.
Right.
So 2016, second base. Wasn't that Brett Lowry? Yeah, it was. There for 1 year, like put up the most. Here, you want to hear Brett Lowry's second base Chicago White Sox slash line in 2016?
Sure.
248, 310, 413 slug, 723 OPS, a 97 OPS plus. Is that not the most average looking slash line you've ever seen?
I was about to say that is exactly average.
Exactly average. Okay, so 2017, you had Yolmer Sanchez, and Yolmer Sanchez was there for a few years, but he would have been like a bench utility guy on most teams. Then you had Yohan Moncada. When he first came up, was a second baseman before he moved to third. And that move to third came towards the end of the rebuild, I think. I want to say his second full year.
Yeah.
Like 2019, he moved over to third.
Yep.
So then you had Nick Madrigal for a little bit. Then you traded him away. And then you had Lurie Legend. And then you had the guy that used to be on the Pirates.
I'm drawing a blank on his name. I'm having old.
Josh Harrison. So it's a 1 year deal, but at least you have a year of something that's a bit more solidified.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fine move. But the other White Sox note I wanted to talk about is, did you hear the press conference with the White Sox GM?
Yes.
That was a masterclass in bad PR spin.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real shame that the reporting to spring training, a year that's supposed to be redemption for the White Sox, that so much of the story has to be revolved around Mike Clevinger, that we have to look at this and be, grossed out by what we've been hearing and seeing. And the whole situation is such a mess.
The Clevinger press conference was good too. He's like, I'm not going to answer any questions that aren't related to baseball. Does anybody have any baseball questions? And he's like, you got a baseball question? The person was like, no, I want to ask you about this. And they just all went back to hammering about non-baseball stuff. And he just went off the rails with it. He's like, my lawyer said not to say anything. And Rick Hahn just like, the frustrating part with Rick Hahn is he never addressed the fact that, sure, White Sox can't do anything, or their hands are slightly tied because of the investigation that's going on, both criminal and Major League Baseball, through the collective bargaining agreement. Sure. But he never addressed the fact that the White Sox can, within their rights, just totally cast him off and DFA him. They have to pay him, but they can get rid of that problem. That is well within their right to do that. But the White Sox won't do that because they're worried about spending that money and not getting anything in return.
Yeah, and I think the most frustrating thing about this is, look, we understand that in terms of administrative leave and suspension, that is up to the league. That's their call. They make that decision. The frustrating thing is you look back and you do some research and you see that there were already well-known red flags with this guy, and you jumped out to sign him like around Thanksgiving. You jumped out to give him $12 million, a guy that, while early in his career was very good, he was jettisoned by Cleveland for a reason. And guys did not like him particularly. There was involvement with the Trevor Bauer stuff. Whether or not you had any knowledge of what was going on with his ex-partners and his kids,
Even
there were still red flags.
Yeah, other like the COVID protocol break. Like there has been things where you're just like some of them isolated, you're like, okay, whatever. But all together, they give the story of a bad character.
And to me, it's like, at the time, you really could have done better. You could have signed a better pitcher for better value. You could have done better.
And what they were doing, and this is exactly what happened, is they saw, we can get a pitcher for this amount of money that we think could bounce back and give us much higher value than what we paid. It is, they bet on character flaws, hoping they could reap the reward from it. And it's blowing up in their faces like one of those cartoon cigars.
Well, and you heard Rick Hahn. I think the quote that stuck out to me was referencing the 2005 team and talking about gambling on immaturity issues or whatever he said. And it was just kind of like, really? And you can kind of guess which guys he might be referring to. But it's like, come on, man. What? You didn't have to say that. That didn't do any good for you.
Yeah, that was just a really bad press conference. And it made it so crystal clear where the importance is for the White Sox. It is on making money and penny pinching and overlooking whatever in order to have to get a value on a player.
Well, and you know what the other thing too is that there were people that were questioning this from a pure baseball standpoint before we knew about the investigation, which had been going on since midsummer last year. This investigation's been going on a while, and you're hearing more of the details come out. But just even from a baseball opinion, when you and I were talking about it initially, before we knew all about this stuff, we were just kind of like, whatever. I guess it could be okay, but but there were plenty of people who were like, I don't really like this move. And there were much better moves to be made. I think that's really where the frustration comes in here.
Yeah, it's the White Sox are valuing financial decisions over character issues. And I'm glad the Cubs haven't had that. They're, off the top of my head, I can't think of any red flag character issues on the Cubs roster, and that makes me happy.
Are you saying currently?
Currently.
Because we did go through Addison Russell.
Yes, but that is no longer, and that was a that was a black eye on the organization.
Yeah,
And-
it was. I did
and-
not like the way they handled that.
It's a very similar situation. Is, you have a player that's on the cheap that you have high expectations for on the field, and you're willing to overlook it. And that was a bad look for the Cubs. That's a very similar look.
Yeah, and I'm going to be hesitant to say I'm glad there's no one on the Cubs because I really don't know. We had no idea about Addison Russell, and it was like, wow. So to our knowledge, no, but I don't know.
I think character is important. So
I hope so.
This is just a bummer press conference, and I listened to it and I just groaned the whole way through, and it was so bad. And then Mike Clevenger's like, "Here, hold my beer," and he went out there and just had a worse one.
Yeah,
and it's really, what should be a contending window is being the whole camp is the only story is Mike Clevenger, and that sucks for all the other players.
Yeah, because there's a lot here. Can Luis Robert be that MVP? Can Eloy Jimenez be that great hitter and stay healthy? We have Oscar Colas, this prospect that could be a big piece for them.
Can Cease win a Cy Young?
Can Cease win a Cy Young? Can Lucas Giolito bounce back? Can Yoan Moncada bounce back? Can Yasmani Grandal bounce back? There's a lot of good storylines that you want to follow here, but there's just this big black cloud over everything. And I know for a fact a lot of my Sox fan friends are unbelievably frustrated, as they should be. I'd be very frustrated too. I'm not even a Sox fan. It frustrates me.
Yep.
You want to hear about good things, and yet there's this big black cloud over it.
Yeah, absolutely. And they handled it so poorly. The right decision should have been DFA him, pay him the money. He goes away, but they're worried about him going somewhere else, pitching well, and not having any consequences. And they would rather deal with this nightmare right now. And you know what? Is it a decision I agree with? No, but it's clearly a decision that they've made. And maybe Rick Hahn, this decision came down from above him, and he's got to just go out there and deal with it. And, sometimes in life you have to go out there and justify a decision that you didn't make and fall on that sword. And that we don't know. Maybe this is a Jerry decision, and not to DFA him.
Well, you know what? What have we been questioning for years? Who actually is in charge? Who makes the decisions? Rick Hahn might be the face of it, but how much of what he does is what Kenny Williams and Jerry Reinsdorf wants? We don't know.
Yeah. What does Kenny do?
We don't know. And it could be very possible that Rick Hahn is just the face and he's taken the beating.
It's, man, anytime you have Reinsdorf involved, there's going to be some sort of weird structure in place in the front office.
Yeah. Look at the Bulls.
Definitely.
Just the absolute downward spiral of crap.
Should we switch over to the Bulls?
I guess.
Another bad loss to Milwaukee, and now we don't have to see them play for a week because of the All-Star game.
Good.
And
how about that loss against the Pacers, huh? Again, similar fashion.
I just don't know how you move forward with this team and find a way to win. There's going to be nights where they go, you're like, oh man, they went out and beat the Celtics again. And you're like, okay, they beat the Sixers. They beat, good teams, but they can't do it consistently. And as soon as they go out and they're like, oh man, they went to Boston and beat Boston, and then followed up, went to Miami and beat Miami. And then they came home and laid an egg against the Magic. You're like, how does that happen? There's so little consistency, and everybody's at a loss for answers. No. And what's the Magic solution? Oh, maybe we'll sign Russell Westbrook.
Are they going to do that now, or did Jerry spend that money on Elvis Andrews? Sorry.
It's just sad.
Yeah, and it's like I don't really have much else to say at this point. They are what they are, and that's just what it is.
I just don't know how I just don't know how they go on. And my fear is that they're just going to sit in the middle and lose out on that first round draft pick to the Magic, and they don't have the financial flexibility to do anything. And the next season is basically the same. Or they re-sign Vooch and run it back out. Fingers crossed that Lonzo Ball is healthy.
Nah. Yeah, my faith's gone. I barely even pay attention anymore. That's where I'm at. It's sad.
It's just really sad. Ugh.
It's Bills fan puke.
It is Bills fan puke. Blackhawks, they stink, and Jonathan Taves has long COVID and is on injured reserve. So the odds of him getting traded are.
I said this on Twitter earlier. I can't speak for him or his health or how he feels. But isn't it just time at this point to hang it up?
He should.
Like, honestly, what more is there to prove? You're either going to get traded or go somewhere else. His era in his time in Chicago, either way, is pretty much coming to an end, most likely. You've had numerous health issues. And this isn't me being critical. I'm just pointing out he missed a whole season because of health issues. And you've had concussion issues. And now you have this issue. I feel like this is a scenario where you just got to think health and life first. You've won 3 Stanley Cups. You've scored all the goals and the assists, and you have a room full with hardware. Again, I can't make this decision for him. I don't know. And I'm sure it's much harder to just say, yeah, I'm done for a game that you played your whole life and loved. But I just feel like there's got to be a time where it's like, you know what? Just got to say goodbye. But
and
we'll see.
Honestly, if he goes to the Blackhawks and says, my contract's expiring at the end of the year, I'm going to retire at the end of the year. You know what? Don't trade him. You're not going to get anything for him anyway. Let him ride it out as a Blackhawk.
Let him play one more game if he wants to, if he's healthy.
And then go on your way. Let him retire. And because at this point, even if he waives his no trade clause, even if he comes back and is like, oh, hey, my health issues are gone, I'm good. Nobody's going to give you anything for him.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a deal for him, you'd be getting Subway coupons.
And at that point is like, isn't it better for the fans to just keep him?
I mean, yeah, I mean, you could say goodbye. You could say, all right, he played his whole career as a Blackhawk, and then you don't really have to speculate anymore.
Is you give him a montage and you put Boys to Men on there with It's So Hard to Say Goodbye, and then you let him go out in the center ice. Everyone claps. He cries, and then you're good.
Yep. Yep.
But the Blackhawks won a nice game today.
They did against the Leafs, and I thought about going to that game, and maybe I should have, but Patrick Kane scored a hat trick. He's got like 5 goals in his last 2 games now, so he's getting hot at the right time, I guess. The thing is teams are making moves, and the pool for him to be traded to is shrinking.
Yep. And he's got to make a decision. The Blackhawks have to be able to get opportunity. He's saying the right things publicly, like, oh, I want to do the right by the organization as well. But doing right by the organization is make a decision. Either say, you know what, I'm not going to waive my no trade clause, or I am. But doing it, just dragging it out until the trade deadline is bogus.
You're not doing the team any favors by doing this.
No, you're not.
You could have been making calls for weeks now. You could have beaten the Rangers for Tarasenko before they had a chance to trade for him.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I would not be surprised, though. My opinion changes every week, I swear. Like 2 weeks ago, I thought that it was getting more and more likely that Taves and Kane were gone. Now I'm starting to think, you know what? What if he just decides like, nope, I'm just going to ride it out? I could see it. I could see either or right now.
And it's crazy to think that, when we started talking about this, like, oh my God, the trade deadline is so far away for the NHL. It's less than 2 weeks away.
It's creeping. And teams are making moves. Look at the Blues. They're unloading.
It's shit or get off the pot time. Period.
Yeah, it is.
The Rangers made another move.
They did.
Got
They are going for it.
So I just don't want to be in a position where Kane finally says, yeah, I'll be traded, and then
the market's gone.
The market's dried up. And then at that point, do you go, well, we'll just get what we get for him? Or do you just say, no, we're like, or do you hold strong and be like, nope, if we're going to have to pay him, then we're going to keep him. Like, I feel like you can't trade him and not get value.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of trading him. You're not unloading a bad contract. You're trying to get something in return.
And you've got to be able to get that value. And if the market's dried up, then you can't sell low on him. You just can't.
Right.
It's a bad look on your organization. And I don't think you're ever going to get too low with Patrick Kane, but I don't think you're going to get the deal you want. I mean, teams are going to pay a premium to get a player early so they can get more games under their belt with him.
Mm-hmm.
And the closer we get to it, the more and more I'm thinking that he's not going to waive his no trade clause. And
I know what you mean.
and games like today, he's going to be like, you know what? It's still fun to be here.
Yep, that's kind of what I was afraid of.
I mean, I was hoping he'd be going into a 12-game losing streak, and he's just like, you know what? I'm tapping.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully the Blackhawks can start dumping guys because it's getting that time.
Time is a ticking.
We got to turn the tankometer up.
Doot. Activating tankometer, which they've won 2 games in a row now. So it's like, okay, that's cool. You can stop now.
All right, that was fun. Now let's go back to our dreams of Connor Bedard dancing through our heads.
Yeah.
So let's wrap this up with a little Bears talk here. I guess the biggest thing is the Bears completed the sale of the Arlington Heights property.
Yeah, that's big news.
It's crazy that Lori Lightfoot is still making the pitch for the Bears to stay in Chicago.
Their value would be higher if they played here where the city owns the stadium and they can't reap benefits of any other events that happen here and don't have an area where they can build more business and don't have the ability to host the Big Ten or the Super Bowl. Just laughable. It pathetic, really. That statement was pathetic.
I mean, it's there is value to being in the city. The city is not showing the value, and they do need to own their stadium.
That's the thing. Like, oh, we'll build you a dome. We'll get you artificial turf. We'll improve everything. Can we own the stadium? Piss off. It's like, well, then why would they?
The city needs to be like, hey, we'll sell you the stadium.
But they're not going to.
They're not going to. And that's the kicker, is there is value to being in the city. You're going to attract things there because it's in the city. There's more hotels in the city than there are in Arlington Heights. There's more restaurants. There's more entertainment. There's everything in the city as opposed to Arlington Heights. Arlington Heights.
Not if they build a complex around it.
But still, it's the Bears. They're going to put a Chili's and an Applebee's in there and a Subway. And then they're all going to close at 7:00 at night.
Ding Dong George is working at the Subway making sandwiches.
He's like, it's my shift. I gotta go, guys.
He puts on the apron in the Subway hat. Oh crap, I'm late for my shift.
He takes off his vest from his other restaurant. He's like, I've got my 16 pieces of flair. I got to put them away so I don't lose them. He's like, I got to take off my shooter's vest.
Just imagine him being the waiter at Applebee's with all the flair and would you guys care for our nice jalapeno poppers?
I was about to say, he's like, I got 15 minutes to eat my jalapeno poppers before I got to start my Subway shift.
All day he's just bouncing around between like all those restaurants and bars and Buffalo Wild Wings needs me. Welcome to B-Dubs.
Wait, he's good. He's like, I gotta start my other shift, and he comes in his Hooters outfit. I've been really working the glutes this week. I think it shows in my work outfit.
For any of our listeners who've seen the King of the Hill episode where Dale Gribble works as one of the waitresses at what's the equivalent of Hooters in their universe. That's what I'm thinking about right now. Oh my goodness. Maybe they'll have a super dog, and he'll have to deliver the hot dogs on roller skates. He gets to your car to put the tray down. It goes too far. It just spills all over the person in the front seat.
It's him dancing around on a table like Coyote Ugly.
They'll have like a hot topic, and he's like dressed in all like teenage goth stuff from like 2007. Welcome to Hot Topic. Can I interest you in some of our black lip gloss?
Do you like my ear gauges?
George, those are circles that are taped onto your ears.
He's got a Auntie Anne's booth outside the building.
Hey, you know what though? That would be sick. If you could go to a Bears game and get some Auntie Anne's, I would totally endorse that.
You know, Auntie Anne's is good when it's like a location that turns over the pretzels really quickly. And when they're the ones that are sitting there for an hour or 2 hours, not so good.
No, but you got to admit the freshly made ones.
The freshly made ones are legit.
So good. So good. Sometimes like I'll just get like the original pretzel with like cheese dip. Sometimes I'll do the like the little cocktail weenie bites. Those are awesome. Have you ever tried the cinnamon pretzel from Auntie Anne's?
Yes, that's my jam.
Oh, so good. You get that with like a lemonade, you're in heaven. Oh no, the lemonade machine, it's leaking.
I squirted lemon in my eye. I can't see.
George, we use a mix to make those. How'd you squirt?
Can't see. The lemons are decorative, George. I can't see. I'm blind.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, ding dong, George.
But yeah, big part in this journey. And you knew that when Kevin Warren took over as president and CEO, one of the main goals was to get this in motion, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's in motion. The property is now closed on, and you're going to see things start to accelerate. I think we're already seeing some sketches of what it could look like. And I want everybody to kind of understand that this is going to go in phases. It's not going to be like one day, boom, everything just opens. It's not going to be like that. You're going to have different phases, because the stadium is the centerpiece. That's what's got to be in place. But all the ancillary stuff is going to come is secondary to that stadium.
Yeah, I mean, you build the stadium and then you build George's Auntie Anne's and then everything else after. This pretzel knot won't twist.
The top came off my pudding can.
Well, and here's the other thing too that we have to make it, really, really emphasize. This is probably going to be at least 7-8 years.
What's the earliest date that they can get out of that contract? Is like 20. What is it? 20. It's going to be several years.
And you're not going to build an NFL stadium overnight either. It's more than just the contract, but developing that land is going to take some time. And, you need the time too to fully develop your plan, where you're going to get the funding from. Where, there's more than just designing the stadium and the Auntie Anne's. There's, the logistics of everything. And, that's going to take some time and resources. And, again, securing funds is going to be That's what you have Kevin Warren for. You have Kevin Warren to help spearhead all of this. And look what he did with Minneapolis. And he did an incredible job. And if you remember in Minneapolis, they announced that new stadium in 2007, 2008, and it didn't come to be until 2016. So these things do take time.
And the earliest that they could break that lease is 2026. I looked per the Tribune. So depending on when, you're looking at probably 4 seasons of being at Soldier Field still.
Right. At least 4.
And so this is going to be the long-term build. And the nice thing though is, you think about Wrigley Field, and when they have to do renovations, everything is so much slower because you don't have the room. You have to do one thing to be able to have the room and time to do another thing because you're in a neighborhood. Same thing with Soldier Field is there's a whole museum campus. You don't have the room. At Arlington, once you flatten that, you have basically unlimited room to do things. Room is not the issue.
No. And the other thing with Wrigley too is you did that in phases because you were renovating an existing structure and you only had X number of months to do it, where this is going to be a straight project. And, the nice thing for the Bears, unlike the Vikings for several years had to play at the University of Minneapolis or Minnesota, sorry, because you needed to tear down the old stadium and build the new one over it. This is going to be a case where it's you're going to be playing at Soldier Field. They're going to build the stadium. And once it's built, then you're going to move over. I think that looking at, and again, this is all guessing right now, but when would you guess that the initial groundbreaking would happen? Because I feel like we're still a year or so away from that even happening.
I mean, they still have to do the demolition of
the racetrack. Right. Yeah, that's an entire 370 acre. How big is it? You have to clear that entire landmass out.
Right.
That's going to take some time.
And I don't know what else they need to do. I mean, I guess you could have the groundbreaking late in the summer, but do they just wait and do it in the spring and then have the whole spring to do it? Because I don't know. I have no idea. No idea what the plan is or how long this is going to take. But the first thing they're going to have to do is demolition the racetrack. And
you first got to secure the funds and all the contractors. And I don't know exactly where they are in that step. I wonder
if they're going to auction off parts of the track and stuff, just when they tore down Old Comiskey, you could buy bricks, or in the case my dad went and stole a brick.
I'm sure they will. I mean, they've already auctioned off a bunch of stuff from there, but in terms of the actual existing structure that's still there, I would assume that they're going to be auctioning off more stuff.
If nothing else, a fundraiser. We got to make some of this money back.
George has a lemonade stand on the corner.
It's I know whenever people come to get their bricks, they're going to want a lemonade and a pretzel. We'll sell it to them as a combo.
It's just a little table that says George's Lemonade. He's got the glass pitcher with the wooden stirring spoon and the
clink, 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 clink,
clink, clink, clink, clink, and the cups.
The little red Solo cups.
Get your lemonade.
He's got safety goggles on so he doesn't squirt himself in the eye again.
Not again.
Not again.
Dang lemons.
Mom. Mother.
Okay, so there's something else I wanted to bring up with the whole Soldier Field thing. Justin Fields commented on it. saying that the wind at Soldier Field could be tricky. He would like to play in a dome. And that's probably just him saying that it would sound nice to play in a dome. It would be nice to be in Arlington Heights. But what happens? Go figure. Here comes the media trying to say, oh, the Justin Fields is begging to get out of Chicago. The Bears should trade him.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about the lunacy behind that?
It's what's funny is like the same guys in the Chicago media that like criticize everything the Bears do because, well, the Bears did it. It must be the stupid wrong thing. They're like bottom feeders. It drives me crazy. Well, the Bears did it. It must be wrong. Well, you know what? Sorry. David Haw, you had the same shtick too. Oh, David Haw is being negative about the Bears again. Ho ho, there he goes, that one trick pony. It's just old. It's just tiresome. The guy, why wouldn't you rather play in a dome? You're a quarterback that
wouldn't any player rather play in a dome than the freezing cold?
Like, I'm sure there's some defensive players that are like, you know what, I like playing in the cold and blah blah. But you know what? This is a modern offense. It runs on timing, it runs on precision, and it works better when you have a controlled environment, controlled field, a controlled temperature, controlled wind. Then it's a better product. So why wouldn't you? Plus, it's cold. Nobody wants to stand around in the cold. You know what? I used to laugh and be like, man, Detroit got a dome, Minnesota got a dome, weak. But now, you know what? If the Bears don't have a dome at the next stadium, I'm not going. It's too cold. I'm not trying to sit there for 3+ hours in the crappy weather and bundled up going, oh my God, just get this game over with. Is it almost over? It's not fun. It's way more fun when, you're comfortable.
Exactly. Air weather hasn't gotten us much in the past 30 years, just for the record.
Yeah, Bears weather is stupid and is not a real thing.
Exactly.
And
what? 3 playoff wins in 20 years? Okay.
And a big majority of NFL players are from Florida, California, and Texas. They're not playing in the cold weather. They're used to playing in warm weather.
Didn't Tom Brady go to Lambeau Field and win an NFC championship there? Yes, he did.
Yeah.
In 2020. So it's okay. So maybe a monsoon helped us beat the 49ers once. Okay. Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah. It's just silly. And enough. The Bears are not trading Justin Fields. Justin Fields is not a running back. So everybody stop with those two things. Of course, the Bears are going to pretend they're going to trade him because it's maximizing the trade value. If everybody knows that you're not drafting a quarterback, your options are either then convince them that another team is going to trade up to jump them and get the quarterback that they want, or sell low or trade low on your first round or your number 1 pick. The Bears aren't doing that. They're trying to optimize it. So of course they're going to listen to offers on Justin Fields. They're going to let float them. They haven't made up a decision yet. There's going to be ambiguity out there. Is if nobody knows what exactly you're going to do, it creates value for that pick. The Bears are trading that pick.
Yes.
They are going to trade that pick and optimize value. And if teams don't want to give them value, then they might stand pat. They might just stay right there and draft that pick, but they're not drafting a quarterback. But the end goal is to get as much draft capital from that number 1 pick as you can. And honestly, everybody is like, or not everybody, the Bears fans on Twitter are like, oh, trade with the Texans. Number one, why are the Texans going to move up? They have there's nothing for them to move up. And the Colts, yes, they could and should move up, but you're not going to get a ton for it. You're not getting their first rounder next year. It's just all these mock drafts are killing me. Greg Gabriel, who was a former scout for the Bears, said the same thing. He's like, listen, all these mock drafts, you are going to essentially get yourself worked up when the Bears are not going to bring back multiple first round picks by moving back 2-3 spots. They're going to have to move back 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plus spots in order to bring back a first rounder next year.
Well, and see, that's the whole thing is you look at the teams that you could potentially trade with, the ones that you're hearing the most rumors and the most scenarios being drafted up. You have trading back a spot with the Texans if they did like Mitch Trubisky and the Bears a few years ago. That I feel like is still a little less likely, but not impossible. I think the most likely would probably be Indianapolis, and you're hearing a bit more around the Carolina Panthers. Could another team sneak in there? Maybe, sure. We've talked about the likeliness of a number of teams. Maybe Seattle sneaks in there. I don't think they're as likely as the Colts, but maybe. But, the three scenarios that I think you've been hearing a lot of people go through have been the Texans, the Colts, which I think would be the leading one, and Carolina. And if you look at each one of those teams, you look at the advantages and you're like, okay, if you trade with the Texans one spot, that would allow you to trade back again, because maybe that sets up a scenario where you say, okay, you trade back from 1 to 2 and the Texans have the number 1 pick and the Colts want a quarterback. So they trade with you and you trade back again and you still stay in the top 5. If you trade back with just the Colts, then at least you could still stay within the top 5. If you trade back with the Panthers, you might get more draft capital in return, but you're going outside that top 5.
And the best thing you got going for you with the Colts is Jim Irsay's nuts.
Yeah, he tweeted him riding a bear.
He's nuts. And Ballard is a smart GM, but if his owner's like, no, I don't care, do whatever it takes to get that first round pick, the number 1 pick, then Ballard might just have to do it and pony up.
I mean, the Jeff Saturday move, that was all Irsay, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was Irsay.
Just whack.
So he's a wild card, and he already said that he wants to draft a quarterback. And he said, and then you had Ballard saying he'd move heaven and earth to get the quarterback that they want. The hope is they fall in love with a guy. If they fall in love with a guy, they're like, shit, we got to go up and get him. Then the hope is that Irsay falls in love with a guy. It's like, we've got to get Young or Stroud or whoever. We have to have that guy. And then Bears are able to extract a lot of value and stay at number 4.
It's a good thing that the Texans are probably going to be wanting a quarterback. So there's less of a chance that they are the ones that trade back, even though they're the second pick. That's the big thing about the Bears is the fact that they're number 1 and the team right behind them also needs a quarterback. It makes you feel safer that they are going to trade back with a team that really wants a quarterback.
Yeah, it's basically you're saying, all right, sure, one of those quarterbacks, those top 2 quarterbacks may fall to you, but is it the one you want most? If you want your guy, you got to come up to the Bears and go through the Bears. So that's where that is. And we're going to see every single week more and more of the shenanigans of Bears Twitter tweeting out these crazy mock drafts. This is the one. And then it's like 14 trades in the first round just from the Bears, and they wind up with 900 first round picks. And just because some computer program said that the Texans would give up the number 1 and number 18 pick to move up one spot doesn't mean that the Texans actually will do that.
Wouldn't that be great though?
I mean, if the Bears could
wouldn't that be great?
If the Bears could get their second round pick to move back one spot, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. I mean, trading back twice would just be the dream.
No, trading back twice and staying in the top 10 would be the dream.
Yeah, so you trade back with the Texans and you trade back with the Colts. Wouldn't that be amazing?
That would be the ultimate dream, but a more realistic one is you trade back with the Colts and then you trade back with Carolina.
So 3?
No. You just trade once back with the Colts, then with Carolina. So
I was talking about Texans and Colts.
Oh no, I said that would be the dream, but the more realistic two trade backs would be the Colts. Then
fair enough.
The Texans would be so dumb to trade up because you have the number 2 pick. Like what more do you need? Just stay there.
Texans, though. I'm not saying they're going to do it, but I don't think it's 100% impossible.
Hopefully,
Can we pray? Just pray.
Hopefully, we just get a team that falls in love with a guy and just like, I have to have this guy.
That's the thing. That's the thing with the NFL is we know firsthand what happens when teams fall in love with a guy and will do anything to get him. Anything. It happens a lot.
It's like drunken bidding on eBay. You're like, oh, hey, this thing, if I wait 4 days for another one to go on sale, I'll get it for $20. But you know what? I'm drunk and I want it right now. And I'm going to outbid this other guy who I don't know. And you're just like up in the bid. And then you end up paying like $85 for something that you could get for $20. And then you wake up in the morning, you're like, the hell did I do?
What did I do last night?
Never let me drink and go on eBay again. But the last thing for Bears I want to talk about is we had the first domino fall in the cap cutting or the salary cutting move is Al-Qadim Muhammad gone.
Yep.
And he won't be the last move either.
Nope. You know what was funny when I first read it? I don't know why my brain just first went to Muhsin Muhammad. I'm like, wait a minute.
They decided to cut Muhsin Muhammad.
After he hasn't played on the team in 12 years?
It's been a minute. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Nope. I think I've said my piece.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. ShyFanPat2 for Alex on Twitter, or AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky Swerski break. The good Lord wants the Cubs to win.
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win. Cubs win. Cubs win.
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7.
the Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.